Continuing our breaking news out of Iraq, coverage of what appears to be the Iranian military action against U.S. facilities inside Iraq. We're getting word of several missiles, surface-to-surface missiles coming from inside Iran to bases housing U.S. troops inside Iraq. We don't know how many missiles. We're hearing from senior U.S. military officials on the ground that it is significant all over the country, according to one. Joining us now from Capitol Hill, Florida, Republican Congressman Michael Waltz. He is a member of the House Armed Services Committee, also a decorated war veteran, a former Green Beret. Congressman, what do you know at this hour? And it's early information, but what have you known about what Iran potentially is doing right now?
Well, from what I was hearing earlier today, we started to see some movement. But, what this reminds me of so far is the attack on the Saudi Aramco, which was actually very sophisticated, surprised a lot of Iran watchers and analysts. You had effective coordination between unmanned drones and surface-to-surface cruise missiles on the part of Iran, which was a pretty sophisticated capability, number one. And then number two, it doesn't surprise me these are falling on Iraq because with the militias that Soleimani, until a few days ago, commanded, they would have pretty effective reconnaissance to be able to kind of dial these missiles in. So what I'm watching for as these missiles fall literally as we speak is, are they hitting infrastructure, or are they specifically trying to target Americans and kill Americans? If they're hitting infrastructure, that could be a signal that while they had to respond, they did so in a way that would lead to some type of future de-escalation. But look, this president's made it clear, if you continue to kill Americans like Iran has done since 1979, there will be very serious consequences, and he will hold Iran responsible, not the proxies. And I think that's the right move.
Congressman, there's a lot of people in this country very fearful that we're heading to a full-scale war with Iran. And while the administration has been saying they want to de-escalate, there are also these images of 52 F-35s from the U.S. Air Force out of Utah saying there are 52, targets potentially. We've seen what the president has tweeted. There are 6 B-52 bombers that have been moved to Diego Garcia that potentially would be used for some action. If it is as you think, and perhaps we are fortunate enough not to have an American service member die in these attacks tonight, and its infrastructure, what then is the U.S. response to the response, do you believe?
Well, I think this is going to be very similar to what you saw if you look up Operation Praying Mantis in the late 1980s, where Iran struck and almost sank one of our frigates. Our response, the Reagan administration's response, was to sink half their Navy. And beyond there, Iran didn't respond again. So one thing you have to understand in their psyche and how the Iranian regime thinks is they're the last ones that want an all-out war with the United States, because the thing they care about the most is regime survival. And they have a long history of marching right up to the edge and then eventually backing down and surviving to spread its malfeasance another day.
But I guess what I'm saying is, reading between the tea leaves here, what is the Trump doctrine as of tonight when it comes to dealing with this? On the campaign trail and leading up to this moment, it seemed like he wanted to pull out and not get the U.S. engaged in these kind of moments. But as we sit here tonight as President, the Commander-in-Chief, what do you think his thinking is?
Well, twofold. Number one, and I think a lot of people are conflating this issue. We are not talking a Normandy D-Day style boots on the ground in Iran invasion. And the president's been very clear, nor do I think militarily that's very wise. But he's also not going to let a terrorist regime, continue to kill Americans time and time again. He's repeatedly shown restraint, whether it was shooting down our drone, whether it was attacking shipping. But when you start storming our embassy and killing Americans, as they did in just this last month, we have to respond. The irresponsible thing would be to let them continue to kill Americans. So I think you're going to see a targeted response. The administration's been clear on its strategy, which is economically to continue maximum pressure. I think you'll see a response on their oil facilities and the refineries that's going to build on that campaign. And the thing the regime cares about its most is its wallet, is its money. is its ability to stay alive. And eventually, they are going to have a choice, either come back to the negotiating table from a position of weakness for a deal that encompasses all its activities, hostage-taking, terrorism, missiles, and its nuclear program, or it's going to face economic internal collapse. That's eventually the response that the regime and the choice the regime is going to have to make. But I would not want the commander-in-chief to allow Americans to continue to be killed. Right. Soleimani has done it for years, and what he did was, I think, a responsible action to eventually de-escalate.
The president said that he didn't have a problem with Iranian cultural sites being on the list of targets. It was a bit of a cleanup today as he was asked about that again, and the defense secretary and the secretary of state also responded. Take a listen.
They kill our people, they blow up our people, and then we have to be very gentle with their cultural institutions. But I'm okay with it. It's okay with me.
I'm fully confident that the president is not going to, the commander-in-chief will not give us an illegal order.
Let me tell you who's done damage to the Persian culture. It's not the United States of America. It's the Ayatollah.
And the president's saying it's okay with me because he'll follow the law, legal targets, and trying to clarify that. But he has talked a lot more than people thought perhaps he was going to talk about what's coming in response to the response.
Well, look, I think the president was showing frustration. I can tell you, fighting these terrorist groups on the ground, I've been incredibly frustrated that we follow the rules and they don't. But at the end of the day, as Secretary Esper and Pompeo made clear, we will follow the rules. And that's even when many times these terrorist groups use mosques and schools and hiding behind human shields to attack us. So, look, I think the president, in terms of his talking about what we're going to do next, is getting inside the Iranian regime's calculus, letting them know there will be an overwhelming response. And this is important. Letting them know that we're not going to hold their proxies responsible. We'll hold the regime itself responsible.
Congressman Mike Waltz, we appreciate your time from Capitol Hill dealing with this breaking story, continuing our break.